But this situation raises serious questions about transparency, governance, internal controls, and whether risks inside the system were being properly disclosed and responsibly managed. Importantly, while the solvency of the fund, thankfully, does not appear to be in question, this situation is very much about governance, accountability, fiduciary oversight, and whether the management structure surrounding a $45 billion trust fund serving 1 in 8 Iowans is strong enough and independent enough. Under current law, the governor and executive branch have hire and fire authority over the CEO of IPERS, while the board itself, the body with fiduciary responsibility, does not. That split authority creates the potential for politicization and weakens independent oversight. In many public pension systems around the country, boards directly hire and oversee their CEOs. Iowa should seriously consider moving in this direction. There are also legitimate questions surrounding executive hiring, due diligence, risk management, and internal controls. As reported, Stephen Herbert was not an unknown candidate to Mr. Samarashki. The two had previously worked together at McKinley Capital Management in Alaska, and publicly available litigation tied to Herbert's prior role in Kentucky appears to have raised red flags that deserve deeper scrutiny. These concerns are compounded by the ongoing whistleblower lawsuit brought by former IPERS risk manager Rich Wiggins, who alleges manipulated investment benchmarks that may have improperly influenced management bonus compensation. The state attempted to dismiss the lawsuit, but a Polk County judge has allowed it to proceed. These are serious allegations that raise questions about governance culture, internal financial controls, and accountability. Now let me be clear. I believe in the mission of IPERS as a critical recruitment, retention, and retirement security program for Iowa's public employees and their families. I want to protect and strengthen IPERS, and I believe Iowa's public employees deserve a retirement system governed with integrity, transparency, accountability, and independence. As your next state treasurer, I will advocate for 5 priorities. First, greater transparency and communication from IPERS Board leadership with members, taxpayers, and the public regarding the ongoing investigation and governance of the system. 2, stronger fiduciary oversight and independent governance that empowers the board to fully carry out its responsibilities. 3, better internal controls, risk management, and executive accountability to ensure no single individual has excessive unchecked authority. 4, an independent fiduciary and governance review conducted by a respected national firm to evaluate controls, oversight structures, and whistleblower claims, and identifying best practices going forward. 5th and last, protection of IPERS from politicization or privatization efforts that could weaken retirement security for Iowa families. The Treasurer's Office is not red or blue in its mission. Its responsibility is to protect Iowa's dollars and cents, restore trust in our public institutions, and serve as a careful steward of the resources entrusted to us by the people of Iowa. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take any questions.
With these priorities that you just listed, if you were to be elected treasurer, are there any of those that you could really accomplish on your own, or would it be more like a legislative or governor action?
Yeah, I think the treasurer is just one of 7 on the board, so I think being visible in communication is an important function of the treasurer to raise some of the questions I'm raising today. But ultimately, those decisions need to be made by the legislature and the governor.
So you're calling for Senate confirmation?
Confirmation of?
The CEO?
Well, or in other cases, you have an independent agency that hires the CEO, and maybe that does include Senate confirmation.
Does that, or any of the other suggestions you're talking about, would any of those in your mind stop what has happened here from happening?
I think, my thought is it's most important to understand what went wrong and not repeat the same mistakes again. And so as part of that, I think we saw the Ian Roberts scandal unfold in pieces. And, initially people didn't think that there was necessarily that much to it. But as the investigation went on, then more details emerged, and it was quite in depth. And so I think at this point we really don't know. We don't know how far this goes. But we've got not just one person being fired. We've got 2 people that are being one that resigned, one that was fired, you know, for not being forthright, I think, and we have a whistleblower lawsuit as well that makes some allegations that I think need to be thoroughly investigated.
Do you think the board should have scrutinized more the hiring of Mr. Herbert, or is that something that the CEO really should be able to handle without the board's involvement?
I think it depends on the level of the way the current policy works. And what I found interesting was that Mr. Herbert was not evaluated by interviewed by the voting board. He was evaluated by an advisory committee. And so there seems to be, you know, different sort of segregated responsibilities that I'm not so sure is given what we've just seen happen, is the best way to go forward. There needs to be more oversight and accountability, the internal controls and so forth, so that this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
As you mentioned, the state treasurer is on the board. What's your evaluation of how the state treasurer has handled this situation, and how would you in the future, if the status quo is maintained?
Well, right now, I think there's an absence of transparency coming from the board. And the board leadership, I think, should be speaking to the public. The treasurer is certainly the people's representative, and I think the current treasurer should be more visible. I think he's made a couple minor statements about the process, but not to the depth that I think the public and the 423,000 members of IPERS deserves.
You mentioned increased executive accountability along with maybe a different vetting process. What else would that look like to you?
Well, I'm not an expert in what all the other pension funds do, but I don't think we have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. I think what we should be doing is taking a look at the overall governance structure and the risk controls. And we ought to look at best practices from around the country. And I think the hybrid system that we have here has been an evolution, I understand, from the previous CEO of IPERS, Donna Mueller. But it may be time now to have more independence with the IPERS board. It sits as an independent body inside of the executive branch, but we're starting to see some of the cracks in the governance process. When you have one group of people that is responsible for hiring and firing, you have another group of people, the board in this case, that has both fiduciary responsibilities. They have a role in the CEO's annual performance review, and then you have another group of people who are apparently doing review of hiring of staff members that ultimately the CEO in this case picked.
How confident are you that, you know, IPERS is okay, is in a good position?
I think I feel IPERS is certainly well funded. It's one of the best funded public pension programs in the country, over 90%. So that's very good news. And I don't think this is a question of the gold is missing from the fund, but I don't think necessarily we know in terms of some of the risk controls and the internal controls how well suited they are. And so one of the things you don't want to have happen is you have internal decisions that you know, could put the fund at risk if we had something unexpected happen. And the process for evaluating those risks wasn't properly done. So I don't think it's a case that $2 billion is missing from the fund, but I think, you know, we ought to be using this opportunity to carefully review how the fund operates. All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.